Hiya, Honest Discussioner here. You all know Sisyphus Redeemed, right? If you don't, you need to check out his channel. I mean, he's awesome. He's the only person on YouTube that can honestly claim, at least that I'm aware of, to be a professional philosopher, although he might downplay the importance of that. He's well-spoken and can make what is often referred to as a drab, overly complicated subject like philosophy incredibly engaging and entertaining to mostly everyone. We've all seen videos from someone we like that's like half an hour long or more and say, forget it, I'm not spending that much time listening to them, but if it's Sisyphus, it's time well spent, and you wish he would keep going once he's done. His lecture on failure was particularly good. The way he told the story of Diogenes made me want to repeat it to all my family members, who in turn really enjoyed it. However, his latest video is on free will, so I have to say something. He gave a talk recently in which he presented research he and his co-author had prepared titled How to Dissolve the Problem of Free Will Determinism. And if you have even a passing interest in philosophy, neurology, or anything related to those things, it's a must-watch. First, Sisyphus presents some entertaining background on the free will versus determinism debate, describing what the problem is and why philosophers are a bit stuck on said problem. He goes back to the works of the Greeks and gets his way up to Descartes with substance dualism, and eventually modern times, going over what we've discovered in modern neuroscience. Now, thus far I have little to actually comment on, only to say that I definitely learned some things about neuroscience that I hadn't already known. Now, at one point, Sisyphus gets down to the nitty-gritty, saying that there is hard evidence for determinism, but yet we seem to experience free will, and that conceptually, this doesn't seem to be possible. He mentions the French philosopher Sartre, saying that every time we experience temptation, we experience free will. That draw to do something and our acting or not acting upon that draw. Sisyphus uses the example of a cookie. Right now, I feel a temptation to eat this cookie. Just look at it. Anyway, based off of this, he says that it seems like we, in fact, do have free will, and yet how can we reconcile that with science showing that our decision-making process is largely unconscious, that we're able to predict people's decisions 6 seconds before they're consciously aware they've made the decision? Well, after going over more evidence from neuroscience, Sisyphus gets to his overarching point, that we need to drop the language of free will versus determinism, that neither free will nor determinism best explains human behavior. Instead, he believes we have to discuss it in terms of control. When do we have control over our actions, and when do we not? Instead of asking whether or not we are freely making a decision, he asks whether or not we are accountable for our decisions. He cites an example of a man who had a tumor that caused him to have no impulse control, which caused him to molest his young stepdaughter. And when they took the tumor out, the impulses stopped. Obviously, this man did not have control, but if someone is what we would normally consider of sound mind, we can hold them accountable. Now, I might be a determinist, but I actually agree with him here. This harkens back to my video on consequentialist morality, in which I argue similar points, but my contention is that Sisyphus hasn't really changed the language away from free will and determinism. What he has done is explain how we can be held accountable given determinism. Okay, so there's no free will, but we are determined, but the entity we describe as a particular individual was in control of their actions, wasn't being compelled by something outside of what we would consider what makes up that individual's mental state, so their actions, for better or worse, are their own. Again, I agree, but I could rephrase Sisyphus' point away from the control analogy and back to free will versus determinism language and say, no, there is no free will. We are determined. However, this is how and when we can be held accountable for our actions. Take the example of cookie. Do I decide to eat the cookie or not? How? That's good. No, I can say my control has caused me to... Can I say my control is what caused me to eat the cookie? No. Control is not the why. What makes up my decision-making process was gone over by Sisyphus. It's done by committee. We all have different needs, and our brains calculate how to best fulfill them. What is stronger? My desire for tasty treats, my desire to lose weight, or maybe the desire to not have to work out so I can make up for the calories I ate? I feel all of these pulls, but this is no different than when you get down to feeling the gravitational pull of the sun, the moon, and the earth, and eventually succumbing to the earth's gravitation, the earth's temptation, if you will. I'm not really arguing that Sisyphus is wrong in anything he says, only that I believe we can account for our behavior with determinism, while still having room for accountability. True, I was determined that I would eat this cookie, but if I were to kill someone just for the basic pleasure of this chocolatey goodness, then that means I will likely later kill someone else for another tasty treat. Therefore, something must be done with me from a societal standpoint, or to put it in Sisyphus' terms, the virtue of my actions was not favorable. And that is why I feel determinism is still the best answer. Watch Sisyphus' videos. He's the only atheist on YouTube I can see myself making popcorn to sit down and watch. He's really that damn good. Have a nice day. Honest Discussioner, out.